In our last video, we talked about the importance and the difficulty of protecting personally identifiable information through anonymity in big data. Now, anonymity means that individuals cannot be identified. Another important element of privacy, however, is confidentiality for what's called non-public information. In its simplest form, confidentiality means that regardless of whether individuals can be identified within the data, their data will not be shared with people they did not specifically allow to see it. The first is that in conducting transactions, companies do share limited amounts of information with third parties. For example, if a person goes to make a large purchase, it's not uncommon for the vendor to call the bank and ask whether the person has enough money in the bank to make that purchase. They're just checking for what's called sufficient funds. And all the bank does is tell them yes or no. And so, there's a sharing of a very small amount of information, but the bank does not pass along the person's account numbers, their ID information, doesn't give them their actual balance, just says whether they have enough to cover a particular transaction. On the other hand, it is also sometimes the case that information is stolen from companies. Several companies have had their data stolen, including credit card information, addresses, and other important personal information. And in some cases, companies have lost hundreds of millions of dollars in business because consumers were no longer confident that their information would be safe. Similarly, another limitation to confidentiality is that companies sometimes had to give their information to courts or government regulators as part of lawsuits that could have put them out of business completely if they did not provide the information. It's a very awkward situation, but it does come up occasionally. The trick with that one is while it is a legal process, it is not something that the users originally agreed to, and so there is a violation of trust even if what's happening is technically a legal process. However, these exceptions don't call for a complete lockdown on data, because the data does provide very important services, but it does call for more care and attention. For example, the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health have instituted policies that researchers have to present a plan to provide access to their data they use in their studies. Additionally, there are insurance companies that now provide insurance for the cost of data breaches, and companies should consider whether they want to purchase that kind of insurance. Finally, companies should very carefully consider whether they even need to have the confidential information in the first place. It's clear that things can go very wrong when data is supposed to be confidential. But again, this doesn't call for a complete avoidance of data with non-public information in it. After all, that's what makes things like restaurant and movie recommendations work so well, and it's certainly important for using big data to make medical discoveries. Some of these benefits are of personal conveniences and could theoretically be foregone, but others have life and death consequences and deserve to be maintained. For these reasons, it's important for companies to consider how they're going to deal with non-public information. That way, the trust of regular people, who are the consumers and people who benefit from big data research, the trust can be maintained and big data can provide its full benefits.